very, very worrisome. The kind of extreme heat, heat waves and heat strokes suffered by a large part of the South India is concerned. Whether it's Andhra, Telangana, Karnataka particularly, people are saying that they have never faced such extreme heat in the recent past, and that's our story today. Bengaluru and even Mysuru, it's not just Bengaluru, reeling under extreme heat. There is no water in Bengaluru. Mysuru is also no better. There is no water. What are the authorities doing? What can the authorities do? There could be diseases which could spread. I don't want to create panic, but what is the way out? Because this is a time when it's anyway very hot. On top of that, for many, this is the election season. So how does one cope? Karnataka is burning up truly, and within a span of a month between March and April, there have been 521 cases of heat strokes and 2 related deaths, one each from Bagalkot and Kalaburgi, and several cases from Chikkaballapur, Bagalkot, Chitradurga and Mandya, which are the worst hit. Of course, an action plan has been put in place in many districts to address such incidents, and in Bengaluru, special rooms have already been set up at KC General Hospital, Malleswaram, Sir C.V. Raman General Hospital, Indiranagar and Jayanagar General Hospital. Like I said, Mysuru is no better and almost mirrors what Bengaluru is facing. Depleting water levels in reservoirs and plummeting groundwater table coupled with heat wave conditions. Mysuru is likely to face drinking water scarcity over the next 2 months. Yes, of course, there are measures being put into place which may result in making up for 12% of the 500 MLD water deficit Bengaluru faces daily this summer. Like what the Bengaluru Water Supply and Sewerage Board, that is BWSSB, has proposed, and that being saving 60 MLD of water daily through supply cut to big consumers. Now, who are these big consumers? There have been 3 categories. There are bulk users who use over 2 crores liters a day, big consumers who use 20 lakh to 40 lakh liters a day, and those who consume between 40 lakhs and 2 crores liters per day. If you add all of them together, they consume 525 million liters per day, which is 36% of the water the city draws from Kaveri every day. Now, the board also announced a 20% supply cut to 38 bulk users. They include, HAL, Biocon, Nimhans, Bengaluru University amongst others. But then it is also very true that the hospitals are exempted from this cut for obvious reasons. Now, the supply cut will be expanded to other big users, mostly commercial establishments, apartments, etc., etc. It's not our intent at all to create panic, but there is also a fear of cholera breaking out in many parts of Karnataka. So, there are 2 aspects to this, and we've done stories after stories because we are running a special campaign, ladies and gentlemen, so far as water scarcity in Bengaluru and other parts of Karnataka is concerned. So, the 2 aspects are, the first is whether the government has taken not only enough, they've taken enough action, but then what I want to say is prudent measures. Have they taken smart measures to save water? And second, are the cities of Bengaluru and Mysuru ready to handle the water crisis and other related issue? To speak more on the issue, TV Ramachandra, environmental scientist, IISC Benagaluru, is with us. And also joining us is Dr. V Mohan, chairperson of the Dr. Mohan's Diabetes Center. So, we have a doctor, Dr. Mohan, and then we also have Mr. Ramachandra, who is an environmental scientist. A very warm welcome to both of you. Namaskara. Dr. Mohan, like I said, I don't want to create panic, but the normal natural corollary of all this is when there is a water scarcity and there are extreme heat conditions, and ladies and gents, there is a difference between extremely hot heat conditions and when ultimately someone suffers a heat stroke. We have a doctor, we ask them what is the difference. Dr. Mohan, what does one do? First, I want to ask, there are things are being said, oh, take cold baths, drink cold water, but I have heard, sir, and I could be wrong, that it can lead to some other complications. Please tell us, how does one deal with this situation, sir?
Mr. Da, I don't think there is any one answer for this. As you said, it's a multifactorial thing. And I mean, how to get rid of this water shortage. And let us remember that it is not only in Bengaluru and Mysuru. Some time ago, we heard that South Africa had no water, and many other cities are beginning to face this. This is all part of a global warming
Huh.
syndrome that we are seeing and all over the world. And in India, we've not had it so acutely, and that too so early in the summer. So it is worrying. The forecasts have been, even a week or 2 weeks ago, they predicted that they were going to have very hot summers, particularly in South India, as you said, and therefore we have to all brace for it. We can't immediately, obviously, find water when it's a long term solution, and governments, I hope, are investing enough money in this. But I'm talking about it mainly from a medical point of view or a
That's what I
health
want
point
to
of
know.
view.
Yes.
And so, I mean, the first thing that can happen is when you have extreme heat and extreme dehydration.
Yeah.
Now, there are cities where, and Bangalore would come under that, where you don't have too much of moisture. It's a dry heat, and even worse would be if it occurs in Delhi and a few
Yes.
other places. Whereas there are other cities like, for example, Chennai, it can be very hot, very humid, but you're sweating. So, in one sense, the sweating is actually good. It's actually protecting you from going into a heat stroke and so on. And also, the sea breeze will come in
Right.
Mumbai, Chennai, or Kolkata being on the coast.
Right.
Whereas for interior, like in interior Andhra, where you mentioned some of those places, Rayalaseema and many other
Yes.
places, and in Bengaluru. So there is no chance of the sea breeze coming in, and it just gets hotter and hotter. In Delhi, for example, the heat keeps on increasing, and after 5, 6, when most other cities are cooled down, Delhi gets hotter and hotter because the
Yeah.
rocks are reflecting the
So
heat.
yeah,
So,
sure. Yeah. So I wanted to know, and if you can just explode the myth that cold baths, cold water, ice cold, does it work really? Because we're talking about Bengaluru, where a lot of IT people asked us this question that, look, I sit in a, ice, like, kind of, I put spread ice in my bathtub and I sit there. Doctor, don't you think that is kind of unsafe? I don't know. You're the doc,
I
I'm not.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether a bath is going to help. Of course, it will cool down the body, obviously. See, what do we do when people, have high fever? We give them an ice bath and put ice on their head. And so, obviously, it works. But I think it's more important to prevent internal dehydration. For
Huh.
example, drinking enough water. And along with the water, remember that salt is also lost.
Yeah.
When you perspire, you lose a lot of salt. So not only water, because if you drink just too much of water with all the salt going, you'll develop a condition of low sodium hyponatremia, which is also dangerous. Your brain will get clouded and so on.
Right.
So the first thing to do is to drink enough water and see that things like buttermilk or lime juice with salt, these are all coconut water. These are not very good
But
during the.
Dr. Mohan, that's what we'll also discuss is where is the water to drink. We're talking about Bengaluru. We are talking about a city which was a city of gardens. Today, everyone is
Yeah.
rationing water. I'll come back to you, Mr. Ramachandra. You're the environmental scientist from Indian Institute of Science, Bengaluru, sir. Welcome to the show. There are. I have done at least 10 shows on the water scarcity in Bengaluru. There are different, solutions given by experts, water usage and significance of cleaning and linking stormwater drains to STPs, other mapping areas with good catchment to enhance water sources. Today, they've also said that if you are consuming in bulk, let's cut down the supply. Sir, today there seems to be a crisis. What is the first thing that the authorities and the government needs to do?
Well, whatever the action that the government has taken, it is, I would say it's the ad hoc or the reactionary approach. See, the long-term sustainable option is, one is the rainwater harvesting. The second is the treatment of wastewater. The city of Bangalore requires about 18 TMC of the water. If we do the rainwater harvesting, the city gets a rainfall of about 700 to 850 millimeter. If we harvest the rainwater, we have 15 TMC of water. That means 70% of the water requirement can be met by the rainwater harvesting. The two options that you can do for the rainwater harvesting is one is rooftop harvesting at individual level so that each house will have 3 to 4 months additional water. The second best option is to rejuvenate the lake and retain the rainwater. Now, for example, the lake, Saraki Lake was rejuvenated about 3 years back. Within a year of rejuvenation, we saw the groundwater table improving to 300 or 320 feet. And today, when most part of the Bangalore is struggling for water, if you come to Sarki Lake, the groundwater table is good and Sarki Lake is full. And because of that, temperature in the locality is at least 2 to
All
3
right.
degree lower than the surrounding,
All right.
which
So,
means
huh.
this is the model to be replicated throughout the state as well as
Right.
in
So
the city.
it sounds
Unfortunately, we
great.
have not done that.
Yeah, it sounds great, Mr. Ramachandra. But the thing is that what you're saying is about a particular area. You say this is the model to follow, but it has not been followed. I mean, it's very obvious. Dr. Rajagopal Kamath, researcher and science writer, is also with us. Dr. Kamath, welcome to the show. Dr. Kamath, today there is a crisis which is staring in the face of not only Bengaluru, ladies and gentlemen, also Mysuru. Other parts of Karnataka are also reeling under severe heat, and there will be water shortage. But let's talk about Bengaluru. We just heard what Mr. Ramachandra said. But the point is, Dr. Kamath, I'm sure you also heard what Mr. Ramachandra said. Enough and more experts have spoken about water conservation. They have warned Bengaluru that this will come to seed one day if you are going to not plan. According to you, Dr. Kamath, if you have to do a surgical strike, what should it be today?
Okay, with due respect to the guests, I wish to differ the opinion that it's because of global warming. It's not because of global warming.
Okay.
One study has found out that Bengaluru and adjoining greater Bengaluru, the vegetation has 80% loss of vegetation is there, and 70% urbanization has taken place. So this is the main reason behind the heat increase in Bengaluru, gradually increasing for the last several years. See, now you are talking about 37, 38, 39 degrees Celsius, but that is a temperature recorded by the weather stations. What about the actual heat? Actual heat we have to find from the heat index. Heat index will be around 5 to 6% higher than the normal heat recorded in the weather stations. So, Bengaluru, the heat experienced by a person will be around 42 to 43 degrees Celsius. There are several reasons for this, sir. Actually, the rapid urbanization has created heat island effect in most of the parts of the city and the greater Bengaluru also. That means the concrete jungle has given its returns. The temperature, the lower temperature, I'm sorry, the lowest temperature has risen and it has resulted in warmer nights in Bengaluru, 25 to 26 degrees Celsius warmer. I'm sorry, warm nights will be, the recorded temperature will be 25 to 26 degrees Celsius. It's not because of global warming. It is because of the reasons, local reasons. And if you can see, we have recorded heat wave condition in North Karnataka and all, that's
Yes.
normal. But what about Bengaluru? It was a cool city. It's not a
Yes.
cool city now. It is a warm city now.
Right.
Actually, there is water shortage. There are no water bodies. There is no
That's what we are
vegetation.
discussing. So you are saying it's not global warming. There are other
Never.
localized
It's not
reasons
global.
which are there. Dr. Mohan, I want to come to you. Dr. Mohan, there are also reports. I don't want to create panic, ladies and gentlemen, but Dr. Mohan, there are also reports. Usually when this thing happens, lot of heat strokes, water shortage, sweating, all that, cholera outbreak also happens. There are a lot of hospitals in Bengaluru have been readied. There are special rooms which have formed, it's Sir C.V. Raman Hospital, in Malleswaram, in other places also. What is the way out? You'll say boil the water and drink, don't drink water outside. But it seems like a very, very tough situation on someone who is, earning every day, has to earn a livelihood. He comes back. What do, doctor?
So, you rightly pointed out about the outbreak of infectious diseases.
Right.
Cholera is just one, and there can be many others. But that's not the only thing which such extreme heat can produce.
Right.
Take diseases like non-communicable disease, take diabetes, take heart disease, take blood pressure. When you have so much of dehydration in the body, you can get heart attacks, you can get strokes. apart from heat strokes, you can also get regular strokes in the, that is paralysis of the brain can occur, heart attacks can occur. If you take diabetes, you take a simple condition of diabetes, you won't think anything to do with heat and diabetes. But when you have diabetes, you have dehydration. That dehydration can push people who are on insulin into a diabetic coma. And also, you can get, due to the dehydration again, you can get urinary infection.
Dr. Mohan, I want to ask you that what are the symptoms? You talked about, stroke and diabetics. You actually scared me, doctor. Then how do I know? I know, we all have to laugh through all that and be pleasant. We don't create panic. But Dr. Mohan, how do I know that I'm suffering from heat stroke? Well, imagine I have a child, who's 10 years old. How do I figure that he or she has a heat stroke? So tell me about the symptoms.
Yeah, so heat stroke is something which comes quite suddenly. People are going out in the direct sun and suddenly they have a headache, they feel giddy, and the next thing they know is they have blacked out. And this can be an emergency. I mean, it doesn't occur that commonly, but if it occurs, it can be an emergency. So apart from the preventing dehydration, remaining hydrated, drinking enough water and things like that, which you rightly said is more easily said than done when there's water shortage.
Yeah.
Also avoiding direct heat. Wear a hat, you find the foreigners always wearing a hat. This is not a custom for us. But even if you don't have a hat, at least cover the head. Try to avoid going out directly in the sun. We can't do that in certain occupations. You're a laborer, you're working on the road, you're doing something. And
Journalists, Dr. Mohan, don't forget us. We have to go report.
Yeah, I know. All of us are exposed to that. But if at least during that peak sun time when the heat is more, if we can avoid directly going out for the next 2 months, it does help a lot.
That's one tip. Like Dr. Mohan says, cover your head if you're going out. That's very, very important. And let me go to Mr. Ramachandra. Mr. Ramachandra, let me ask you, your Dr. Kamath said that, listen, this is not global warming. I want to ask you about a surgical strike. Because see, we've tried everything possible in Bengaluru. We know there is an excess. I know that stakeholders are never taken into confidence. The government says they will do this. Kaveri water. We've, heard this story ad nauseum. What do you think is an extreme step to be taken, Mr. Ramachandra?
One is the extreme step is, what is happening in Bangalore and most of the cities in India is a unplanned urbanization.
Okay.
Over the last 5 decades, there has been an increase in paved surfaces to an extent of 1,055%. And we have lost 88% vegetation and 79% of water bodies. Vegetation and water body acts as a heat sink. We have done the study of land surface temperature, which is at least 6 to 7 degrees higher than the ambient temperature. It shows an increasing trend. And also it shows the lower temperature wherever the vegetation or water bodies are present. For example, if you look at Bangalore, in 90s, it was 19 degrees. And in 2000, it became the 21 degrees. 2010, it became about 27 degrees. And today, in the month of March, April itself, we have reached the 36 degree. Now, the surgical strike, what you are referring to, I would say first and most thing is we need to decongest Bangalore. And we need to make the city livable. That today, it's unlivable, the status the city has attained because our growth has surpassed the carrying capacity of the region. So I would suggest that first and foremost thing is to do is the decongest the city. Let us shift some of the major installation from the city and shift it to the other districts or other taluk so that the youth need not come to the Bangalore.
I don't know if that is going to be possible. I wish that's possible. Dr. Kamath, what is your suggestion, sir? You think, this is a step which can be taken, Dr. Kamath, that you shift major installations? How do you do that? It requires government, it requires infrastructural companies. It would require amendments, don't you think?
Yeah, sure. Of course, we need urban forestry. We have to plant forests, smaller forests all over the city and in adjoining areas also. And we have to increase the quality of the water bodies. And the water body should be more, it should be filled, rainwater harvesting should be there, everything should be there.
Okay.
And also, I would like to mention one more thing also. This is going to continue for 3-4 years because we are facing the solar maximum. The intensity of solar radiation is more during the solar cycle. Solar maximum has started 2 years back and it has reached the peak. Now, sun's radiation is intense, and it is going to be there for the next 2 to 3 years. So we have to
Right.
face it for
Okay.
the next 2 to 3 years. Now,
All
if
right.
we take action today,
Huh.
then we can, within 1 or 2 years, we can show a gradual
But
decrease in the
Dr. Kamath,
temperature.
tell me something. You are saying it will show some results. You also said earlier that this is not something, Bengaluru was a cool city. This is what has become of Bengaluru. What is with Mysuru, sir? Even Mysuru,
Mysuru,
ladies and gents, I told you, Mysuru is going through the same thing. We all used to live in Bengaluru, then we slowly said we will move to Mysuru, then maybe we should move to Udupi, then go to Coorg, then just get out of Karnataka. So I am asking you that what is with Mysuru?
Madam, it is simple thermodynamics because the heat will not remain in a place. It will pass
Okay.
on to the place where the heat is lesser. That means that is a normal physical phenomenon. It's a dynamics of the atmosphere. So now I see that Mysuru is also recording 37, 38 degrees Celsius. It is actually quite natural because the adjoining areas are showing higher degree temperature and the heat will flow to that place also. Even though if they have a forest region, more forest region than Bangalore, it's quite likely to experience higher temperature there
What a
also.
pity.
See, what about northern Karnataka 40, 41, 42 degrees Celsius, and it's going to be more.
Oh
They're
my
telling that
God.
on 9th there will be some rains. That will not be sufficient. It will not help the groundwater level. We have to replenish the groundwater level. For that, we have to take urgent measures. We have to use the rains. Use the rain, it's flowing out, it's
But
going
only if
nowhere.
there is enough rains. You say that's not going to suffice. Between March and April, you've seen the situation. Now you're saying it's not going to be enough. Already many talukas are facing the drought. So it seems to be a
Right.
very bleak situation. Let me go to Dr.
Yes.
Mohan. Dr. Mohan, is there a particular age group that is most vulnerable to this kind of, whether it is epidemics or even a heat stroke? I was told that people who have comorbidities, 60 and above, need to be more careful. But what about infants? What about children who go out? What about, so just tell us about the risk factors involved.
So the children at extremes of age, obviously, are more at risk. So
Right.
children who say below the age of 5, they can very easily get dehydrated. Of course, elderly is the highest risk because they would already be having conditions like blood pressure and diabetes, heart disease, and other. They'll be very quite frail. So even say 10%, 20% drop in the water intake or the heat can affect them. So people at ages, extremes of ages, are most likely to be affected, most severely affected. But having said that, they are the ones who are most likely not to go out. How many elderly people will go out of their homes? The ones who go to work are the fit people. And all these heat strokes that we are seeing need not necessarily be only in extreme ages. It could be also in manual workers or working on the road or working somewhere else, construction workers. That's their living. They have to do this in the hot sun, and that is where they get exposed. And after a certain level, just because they are in the peak of their age, it doesn't mean that they are protected. So I think
All right.
everybody is at risk, and everybody has to take some precautions.
All right. I have just 1 minute left. Mr. Ramachandra, this about cutting down bulk usage of water by establishments. Do you think it's a smart move? Or do you think it is just a show to say that we are also doing something? It's like taking away from the rich and giving it to the poor.
Tell me, where is the water? People are facing a serious water shortage. You know, uh, Maybe that will work to some extent, maybe about 10 to 12% if we implement it. But unfortunately, implementation is the major problem in India. Most of the regulatory agencies do not function. That I would say that we should do the rationing of the water so that all sections of society get an equal amount of the water,
All right.
irrespective of their economical status.
All right. And on that note, thank you very much, TV Ramachandra, Dr. Rajagopal Kamath, and Dr. V Mohan, Chairman of Dr. Mohan's Diabetes Center. Thanks very much.